What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined today with a special guest, Digge546. I'm sure you guys all know him. He's been on the channel a few times, but it's been a while. But I'm happy to have you back, Digge. How you doing today?
Man, doing well. Happy to be back.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know how long it's been. I feel like it's been way too long. I think the last time we talked, we were talking Brandon Ayuk trades. Meanwhile, today he got extended.
Exactly. It may have been that, or I don't know. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, maybe there was somewhere in between there, but it's been a long time coming. Happy to have you back on and happy to dive into this team as we get closer and closer to the regular season. They just finalized the roster on Tuesday. Well, finalized the initial roster, made some more changes to it over the past couple days, and we're getting closer, almost there for the regular season. What's your main takeaway from the roster? Obviously, they cut down all those players on Tuesday, Hodgins being one of the notable cuts. Anything that stood out to you on that initial 53?
Yeah, I would say my initial kind of nothing was a huge shock, of course, but the initial kind of like thing that made me look twice was the fact that Isaiah Hodgins and Allen Robinson didn't make it. I thought they were fighting for one spot, and then I thought Gunner and McKenzie were fighting for one spot. So I guess Gunner made it, but neither Hodgins or Allen Robinson made it. So that was strange. And then to see Bryce Ford Wheaton make it also was like I wasn't expecting that. But I'm guessing they're going to use him as that gunner to replace whatever Miles Boykin would have done, and hope that he can kind of develop into that because he is 6'4" and runs like a 4.3 something. So he's got the potential. But the receivers definitely stood out. And then also another kind of thing that I didn't expect was they kept 10 offensive linemen. And Austin, isn't it Austin Schlotman?
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Schlotterman, I
Sloatman.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sloatman. He just got hurt today. So he was the
Mhm.
10th offensive lineman, and I was surprised that they kept him. But now he's going to be on IR for at least, I think they said at least 8 to 10 weeks. So he's probably going to be done for the season. So back to 9 offensive linemen, which I think we can kind of get by with. But other than that, I mean, no real shocker for the final 53, which can be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, I kind of want to give my expanded take on this because I discussed it a little bit on the channel so far. But the Isaiah Hodgins release, I'm not going to blow it out of proportion, overreact, and pretend like they cut some superstar. Like, I get it. He's WR5 or 6. But the reason that I'm frustrated by it in a way is because I think he added something to this team that nobody else does, and that was quality run blocking from the wide receiver standpoint. I don't trust Jalen Hyatt as a run blocker. I don't know what Neighbors does as a run blocker. Wan'Dale Robinson doesn't move that needle, and Slayton's okay. So I thought Isaiah Hodgins was the best run blocker of the bunch, and I thought for that reason he could make the roster. And instead, they go with a guy in Bryce Ford Wheaton who's been banged up a lot, who made the roster for special teams. And that seems to be the trend here for a lot of these guys that they kept at wide receiver and linebacker in particular. They wanted flexibility to play on special teams, but it feels to me like it came at the expense of adding that talent in those niche positions on offense and defense. So that's kind of the bone that I have to pick with it.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, Brian Dable made me think that this wouldn't happen because he said that sometimes you'll let a guy make the roster because of what he did in the past and not necessarily for special teams or for what he did in the preseason. So I thought that was like coded language for saying Isaiah Hodgins is making the roster, but apparently not. And that is a really good point that you bring up. I don't trust any of these receivers in the run game now because the best 2 blockers were probably Isaiah Hodgins and Allen Robinson. And Sterling Shepard's long gone. So none of these receivers, I mean, first off, you kind of look at them and like they're not imposing wide receivers besides maybe Malik Neighbors. None of them are really imposing, and none of them really have shown that they can run block. So Odell was a decent run blocker. He wasn't a huge guy, so hopefully they have that kind of heart to do it. But if not, that is definitely a good point. And receivers are definitely underrated in that aspect of the game.
Yeah, especially for a team that probably wants to get outside zone a little bit more with Andrew Thomas pulling. So you're going up that left side, and who's your left side receiver? It's usually Neighbors, but I don't know how great of a run blocker he is. And if it's Slayton, I don't know how great he's going to be. So I just think generally speaking, it would have been good practice to hold on to Isaiah Hodgins. I'm very happy that he wound up on the practice squad for this reason alone. I'm sure he
Exactly.
gets called up several times throughout the year until they reach their maximum. I think it's what, 4 call-ups or something like that, and then they have to be on the active roster.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, there wasn't a ton of surprises. At linebacker, though, I felt similarly. I thought a lot of those guys on the back end are purely just special teamers. Like you've got Okereke, you've got McFadden, and then behind them, Deontay Johnson's going to be on IR, but it's Carter Coughlin, a special teamer, Darius Masua, also a special teamer, Matthew Adams,
Matt Adams, yeah.
also a special teamer. So I just wonder if maybe I get it because they got burned on special teams a few times last year, but I just wonder if maybe they could have placed a little bit more of an emphasis on the guys who are going to be playing down to down on offense and defense.
Exactly. I'm thinking that the guy we just brought in, I'm forgetting his name. I think his name was Bolton. His last name is Bolton. He's
Yeah,
another
also a great
special
special
teamer.
teamer. Yep.
And but I also think they want him to play. I think they want him to be whoever is up after all of these injured linebackers. So I'm thinking they want him to play. And Carter Coughlin obviously is here just for special teams. I've seen people kind of talk about Carter Coughlin and say, do we actually know that he's a good special teamer? I'm not sure, but he's here for special teams. And it is, I think some guys are just culture guys. Some guys are just here for the vibes. And yeah, we got at least out of the 6 linebackers we might have on the roster, 4 of them are, you think, special teams first.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And so that's, again, where my concern stems from. I'm not overly concerned. I don't want to blow anything out of proportion. I don't want anybody getting angry with me for being pessimistic in the comments or anything like that. I'm not that pessimistic, or I'm not that upset about, these sixth string guys getting released, but I just find it interesting the way that they've constructed the back end of the roster. Very heavy emphasis on special teams rather than depth for injuries in the first 2 facets of the game. But in that second facet of the game, if we're talking defense, cornerback, I know that there is a great concern among all Giants fans about CB2. I want to get your take on it. I want to know how you feel about Cordell Flott, Nick McLeod, Trey Hawkins, if you think the CB2 is on this roster, if you think they're going to add one to the roster, or if you think that they're just going to be kind of stuck for the rest of the year without a reliable CB2.
I have mixed feelings about this because on one hand, I kind of feel like everyone else where it's like, what are we going to do at cornerback too? But on the other hand, I kind of feel like we don't have any proven cornerbacks. I think a lot of faith is put in the Deontay Banks to like take a step forward. But if he plays like how he did last year, we don't have a cornerback 1. And this isn't me saying like if he doesn't, he's not going to be a good player because he's still young. He's like a young player already, and he's only in his second year. And sophomore slumps for corners are really common. But he's got to take a step forward and be like a notch below Pro Bowl at least to justify him being this cornerback 1. And then you look over at Nick McLeod, he's always someone that's been solid, but the question is, can he be solid for an extended period of time where he's playing in one position? And I just don't know. And then Cordell Flott, the exact same thing. As an LSU guy, I've been rooting for Cordell Flott since he got here, but he got here. They started him off in the slot. He looked, the worst he's ever looked in the slot. And then he got outside. And we all remember that game where he played against A.J. Brown and like literally locked him down. And then he plays against somebody else and looks horrible. So he's inconsistent, and then he's always hurt. So that's just not a good recipe for this. It's just not a good recipe for the cornerback room. And then behind that, Darnay Holmes is gone. You just saw that Darnay Holmes is on the Raiders' final 53. We all laugh at Darnay Holmes and complain, but he was definitely not good. That let's not do that. But also, Darnay Holmes is at least someone who's played, he's just someone that we've seen play already. A lot of these guys we just haven't seen play, and we just don't know what they are. So cornerback 2, 3, 4, 1, all of it is a question mark to me. And then the other safety spot across from Jason Pinnock is a question for me too.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's going to be a little bit of a mix there to start the season between Nubin and Belton, and I think they're going to see whoever plays better is just going to take that spot full time. I guess the one guy that we haven't mentioned in this cornerback equation, but I don't think he lines up out wide, would be Isaiah Simmons. He's kind of the guy that I keep forgetting about because he's not listed at linebacker on the website, and it's hard to find him over at cornerback. You never think of him. I guess he's just one of their tweeners who plays nickel, who plays linebacker and everything. I guess he's a guy to keep an eye on. But the CB2 spot, I like McLeod. I've never been crazy about Cordell Flott, and I pull for LSU as well, not as strongly as you do because I'm not super into college football, but I root for those guys because of that reason as well. And I don't know, I just never been crazy about Flott. I thought maybe when he was in the slot, he could have been something, but on the outside, I think he gets banged up too easily. McLeod was the guy that I liked because of that performance against A.J. Brown, which you mentioned. And then last year, I felt like they pulled Trey Hawkins from the lineup too early. I know he was young and he was really struggling, missing a ton of tackles. Perfect passer rating against him. I know all of the negatives, but there were some positives throughout the summer. And I think he's a young kid. And I think sometimes the best way to get better is to keep failing. I think that he was pulled from the lineup too soon. Maybe he ends up being the sleeper that steals that job.
Yeah, I think I definitely think he's a sleeper because something to note is that he didn't play the last preseason game. So they obviously think a lot of him, or at least they've at least seen enough from him to say that he should be on this roster. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see, because who knows if Cordell Flott will be healthy. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Nick McLeod struggle, and then you see Trey Hawkins come in, or they even do, I think, what they did to start the season last year, where he just kind of split time outside. I wouldn't be surprised to see that either, because he's a guy that, I mean, what is he, like 6'2", over 200 pounds, fast, can jump high. I mean, he's everything that you want in a cornerback. It's just about him, putting it all together.
Yeah, and I think with more time, he could put it all together. It's just going to take time. And how much time do the Giants have? If you listen to Joe Shane's press conference yesterday, you get the sense that maybe they don't have as much time as fans initially thought. That was a little bit awkward. We talked about that on the channel today. We got some mixed reviews in the comment section on our discussion on that moment, but it just felt very defensive. It felt a little ominous, and it felt like it was too soon in the season, considering the season hasn't started, to be getting that defensive. But again, I don't want to blow anything out of proportion before the season even starts, but that was an awkward moment. I wonder if you kind of have similar feeling to that, if you have a take on it. And for everybody who might be listening that doesn't know what we're talking about, Joe Shane yesterday was asked essentially, John Mara said that he wants to see significant improvements this season. What does that look like to you, Joe Shane? Joe Shane kind of said, well, ask him. You already talked to John Mara, and he got a little defensive about it. And then he just said, we want to win football games. And I don't know. It was a little weird, but I don't know if you have a take on it.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to read too much into these press conferences, but at the same time, I think Joe Shane isn't satisfied with what the roster looks like. I think he's kind of disappointed in how the roster looks. And I mean, pretty much when someone's insecure about something and you question them about it and they get upset, that usually is a telltale sign that they're not happy with it. So I think that's really what's going on. I don't necessarily know if he's feeling the heat from John Mara that he has to win this year, but I do think that he's kind of insecure about the state of this roster. And I'm one of the guys who, I'm not really someone who's overly critical of Joe Shane right now, because I really do think he inherited a horrible situation. Because when you look at GMs that have turned things around really quickly, they usually have cap space. They usually have a guy that, and this is kind of Joe Shane's fault. He decided to pay Daniel Jones, but it was after a 2022 season where he looked like a top 15, 16 quarterback that you could win with if you continued to build the roster around him. But he had no cap space when he got here. He had 2 picks in the top 10, and you're like, okay, this is a slam dunk. You have Evan Neal, who's literally been talked about as a top pick for years. You have Kayvon Thibodeau, who's been talked about as a top pick, as a game-changing, ridiculous pass rusher since he was in high school. You take both of those guys, they fall to you. Evan Neal hasn't been able to even be starter level or even below average starter level play. And then Kayvon Thibodeau, I do think he's going to be a good player, but I don't think he'll ever be the guy that's like Von Miller, that's completely can wreck a game at any second. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think he's a guy that you look at, we'll look back at it and say he was a guy that got 8 to 10 sacks every year, that was a real player for us, but not a Von Miller type, a guy that's going to walk into the Hall of Fame. So I think he's had a lot of that happen. And then he's had a tremendous amount of his picks be injured their entire rookie contract. So you can't really make excuses. He's getting paid a lot of money, but he's had a rough go at it, and he's obviously sensitive about it. So I mean, the only way he can get out of this is if these players that he drafted, if they go out there and win. Because right now, the funny thing is Gettleman's picks are doing the work for him. I mean, Dexter Lawrence is carrying this defense. Saquon Barkley did a lot of work last year, so he's got to have some of these players that he drafted be the reason that the Giants, if they make the playoffs, it has to be because of some of the players that he's drafted.
Yeah, and I think we can credit him for retaining Dexter Lawrence and signing him early, like
Definitely.
sooner
And
rather
Andrew
than later, and
Thomas.
Andrew Thomas as well. Like he made a couple of those moves, but obviously he can get criticized for his handling of the Saquon Barkley situation. Whether you're happy he left or not, you can argue that whatever happened should have happened sooner or later. There's so many ways to argue that
Yeah.
one. And then I won't even touch the elephant in the room, which is the Daniel Jones contract. Like that's a whole nother massive topic of debate. So he's had a very controversial go at it in the past few seasons as the new GM, but you're right. He inherited an absolute mess. Like you look at this roster, and he's pretty much spent the last 2 years cleaning out all of the Gettleman guys, minus Jones, Dexter Lawrence, Andrew Thomas, and maybe
Yep.
there's one or two others. So
Slay.
he's trying to make it his roster now. Yeah, Slayton as well. He's trying to make it his roster now and then move forward from there. The fear here for me is that he's got this vision of what this roster is supposed to look like.
And we'll never
By the
see it.
time by the time he gets the clean slate, he gets fired. And so the Giants have to win this year, but I don't know how confident we are in Dable and Jones and everybody. But I do want to touch on one player in particular that you mentioned, get your take on him. It's Evan Neal. You know, you discussed that 2022 draft class, which I think is just such a crucial one for the Giants. They've already missed on a few of those picks, like absolutely have missed. Marcus McKethan's no longer on this team. Josh Azidu doesn't look like he's going to pan out into a starter like they wanted him to be. Neither does Flott. And then you have, was Wandale in that class? Wandale was a good pick. That was a second round pick. That's a good pick. Thibodeau seems like he's going to be a good pick. Yeah, Zito was a third round pick.
You can't get a starting guard out of a third round pick.
Yeah, the top 100 guys should be playing a decent amount, and Zito's been playing, but hasn't necessarily been playing well. But then again, it's Evan Neal is the big glaring mistake that he made with that number 7 pick, and I don't fault him for that. Like I got to clarify for anybody who might be like upset with me saying that. I thought Evan Neal was a slam dunk pick. You probably thought Evan Neal was a slam dunk pick. I think almost everybody watching us thought that was a slam dunk.
We were already thinking like 8 years in the future. We're like, we have our bookend tackles for the next decade.
Yep. I mean, I wanted him at number 5. Like I was ready to go with him with the 5th pick. Exactly. They get Thibodeau. They get Evan Neal at 7. I thought it was just the dream draft class. So far, it just hasn't been the case. Now the Giants yesterday, they're talking about Evan Neal at that press conference. And Dable says, we have enough guards. We're not going to try Evan Neal there. That's what I want to get your take on. Should Evan Neal be playing guard? I think everybody knows how I feel emphatically. Yes, he should be playing guard. I'm curious to know how you feel.
I don't want to see him play guard because I don't like his hands. I think he's a good run blocker, and I think maybe he could do some work that way. Maybe like kind of like a Marshall Yonda, who was like a dominant run blocker, but not really that great of a pass blocker. But I mean, I wouldn't be angry if they moved him to guard. I mean, mostly I think it's more of a sunk cost effect issue where it's like we've already drafted Evan Neal and we just don't want to throw him away and we want him to be a starter. But I just don't see him being a good guard. I mean, he's big, he's clumsy, he needs kind of a lot of space to operate, and his punch is horrible. So if we move him to guard, he's going to have to develop into that. And I just don't know if he can do that. And at the same time, it's like, should we give him another shot at tackle? I don't think so, because I don't think the rest of this roster and regime can afford that. So with Evan Neal, I'm just kind of done. I mean, I'm kind of just writing that off as a loss. But if he became a starting guard, I mean, that'd be great. Because I also didn't think Eric Flowers would be able to be a good guard because his hands and feet were horrible. So maybe he can prove me wrong.
Yeah, it just is so unfortunate. I don't see a bright future here for Evan Neal, and I think that he's one of those players. You mentioned Eric Flowers. It's a perfect comparison. A player who was drafted as a tackle, didn't pan out, needed a change of scenery, then played guard and found some success in the NFL. At this point, I think Evan Neal probably just needs that change of scenery, and that really sucks to say because you hate missing on top 10 picks.
I just went to the Falcons' last preseason game last week, and I got to see Evan Ingram catch 2 touchdowns. And it's just, first off, I just want to just say I was right for all these years for saying, like, stop harassing Evan Ingram because he's sensitive and you're getting to him when you boo him and you harass him online. Because in Jacksonville, he just looks so confident. He looks comfortable. So I mean, hopefully, I mean, for Evan Neal's sake, he doesn't look like a guy that really loses confidence. But at the same time, when I look at him play, he doesn't look confident in his stance. He doesn't look confident in blocking. Maybe he does need that change of scenery. And I think his best shot is still at tackle. I think he has to get somewhere where some offensive line coach can just tear his technique apart and build it up from the ground up. But he has a lot of talent. He's had the injuries with the ankle, and he keeps retweaking the ankle every time he comes back from it. It's just a lot going on with Evan Neal.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a lot going on. First, he had the ankle strain or sprain, whatever they thought that it was, misdiagnosed, ends up being a fracture. Then he comes back, still not healthy in preseason or in training camp, rolls on it again in training camp and preseason. So, I mean, just bad break after bad break.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say he's kind of clumsy. So, like, do you want this guy even tighter in at guard where he's tripping over more people and stepping on other people's feet? Because ever since he's been here, he's had a bad ankle. And every time the ankle looks good, he looks like okay at tackle. And then he tweaks his ankle and he looks horrible again. So if he can't play through that ankle, I mean, he can't play tackle in the NFL.
Yeah, he also had the knee problem. That was against Jacksonville, I think, in 22. I mean, it's just been bad break after bad break for him. It's really unfortunate to say. I don't know if there's a way for him to turn it around here with the Giants, though. I think Evan Engram was a great comparison because that's a kid that clearly had the talent, just wasn't in the right spot, needed to go to the right place. Jacksonville was perfect for him.
Small market, nice fans.
Yeah.
That's not here.
I will say I will have to push back on that. Nice fans, maybe not. Nicer for sure. But I went to a Jags game. I went to that game actually that Evan Neal got injured in. They were not nice. That was a brutal environment, but it was a really fun one because that was the game when the Giants won down at the 1 yard line. They made that stop. I mean, I was out of my seat. The ground was shaking, like it was just bumping in there, and yeah, it was in the crappiest area of Florida. Didn't like it at all, but had a good time watching the Giants get a clutch win.
That's hilarious.
Guess we can jump into some of these chats. Let's see. Plumber Mo says, haven't seen me do anything with the NY DeVito I gifted you. That's the little icon that he has over here. It's pretty sweet. Once we see Tommy DeVito take over as the starter in week 8, it's getting posted everywhere, Plumber Joe. Don't worry. Obviously saying that a little tongue-in-cheek, but you never know with this team. How much do we still have to make a splash signing? I'm going to roll this into a question for you, Diggy. I think the number is around 15 million, give or take a couple million. Do you think the Giants should make some sort of a splash signing, though, and what would that look like?
I don't think – I mean, first off, when you say splash signing, I don't think there's any splash players out there. But if you're going to go buy a starting cornerback, I mean, if you can get someone for like 5 or 6 million, I'd be fine with that for a year. But other than that, I don't see the point of like really trying to go heavily. Like a guy like Stephon Gilmore, I wasn't in favor of signing because, I mean, what difference is Stephon? If this team is as bad as some people think the team is going to be, what difference is Stephon Gilmore going to make? Like, do you want to, instead of being a 3-win team, you want to be a 7-win team instead? When you should have been a 3-win team, and then Stephon Gilmore isn't going to even be here after this year. So if we can find a serviceable starter at corner or a defensive tackle for less than $5 million, I say do it. But if not, I'm perfectly fine with the guys that we got. Not fine, but I mean, I'm fine moving forward with them for now.
So some of those guys who might be out there, whether it be Caleb Farley, Desmond King, those are two guys who just recently, injuries are obviously a problem there, but those are two guys who just recently hit the free agency market. Adoree Jackson has been sitting all summer, which does surprise me. I wonder if a reunion could be made there. Anybody else that comes to mind? Yeah, I think so too. Anybody else in that mix, though, cornerback, whether is your preference Adoree Jackson or is anyone that comes to mind?
I think Adoree Jackson makes a lot of sense. It's not like he's played in this system, though, but I think he's kind of like he's a vet and he's just – wait, he did play in this system. was this the same coaching staff when he played in Tennessee?
Let me
It may have
double
been a
check
different
that.
coaching staff.
Let's see, because I
I know
think
it wasn't the same
Bowen.
defensive coordinator, but if Vrabel was there when he was there, it might be the same system.
I think Vrabel was there because he was with the Giants beginning in 2021. So Jackson was there in 2020. I'm pretty sure Mike Vrabel was there.
Yeah. So
So
yeah,
yeah, there
that
might be
might
some
be a good
overlap.
fit.
Yeah, Bowen took over as DC in 2021. Let's see when Mike Vrabel took over in Tennessee. He took over in 2018, so there's definitely
Okay,
some sort
so
of
Dory was
overlap in the
so
scheme.
he does probably have some experience in this system. Caleb Farley, I would love Caleb Farley if he was healthy, but I just don't think he'll ever be healthy. And I mean, poor guy, he lost his parents in a house fire, and he's just been injured his whole career. So I'm really rooting for him to have a good career, but I'm just not sure if he can stay healthy at this point. He's been injured since he's been in college.
Yeah, that's unfortunate because I remember when he was coming out of college, I really liked him, and I thought that he was a player that,
Exactly.
depending on how the draft went, I would have liked him in Big Blue. But unfortunately, I could see him signing on here because of that familiarity with Bowen and the scheme,
Yeah.
and I think it makes sense. It's just like you said, I don't know if it solves anything because you sign him and maybe you get 4 weeks out of him, and maybe then he's injured again. So it's just kind of, I don't really think there is a solution to
Yeah.
this cornerback spot. I think what the Giants have is what they've got, and that's what they're going to have to play with.
Yeah, I think you'll see them go in the week one with basically what they have, and then if it looks like a disaster, I think they'll go after Adoree.
Is Jordan Addison healthy for week one?
It doesn't matter because he's suspended for DUI.
That's right. That's right. Well, Justin
Their tight
Jefferson
end
gets
is out
matched
too,
up on. Yeah, Hawkinson's out for I
and
think the
he
first 8
destroyed
weeks or
us
so.
2 years ago.
Yeah, he did. So I'm happy we're not facing him. But Justin Jefferson versus Deontay Banks is going to be a fun one. And then when they inevitably move Justin Jefferson around the formation, and he has
Andrew
to
Phillips.
he has to get covered by Andrew Phillips or maybe McLeod on a play or two. I don't think that's going to be a fun sight.
Yeah, I mean, what would you say scares you the most about the Vikings besides the obvious Justin Jefferson? What would you say scares you the most about that team?
I'm going to have a more broad answer that's not specific to a player or a position group. I'm going to say the hunger to prove everybody wrong. Like they are a perfect team that's either going to crash and burn out of the sky this year, or they're going to shock everybody. And week one, a team like that is not the team that you love to face, right? Because I get it. Like the Giants match up well against them. The Giants have a really good defensive line on paper. They're going to go up against Sam Darnold, who plays very poorly under pressure. All
Yeah.
that makes sense, but it's a Kevin O'Connell coach team who gets the most out of quarterbacks, whether that be a Kirk Cousins or maybe it could be a Darnold. I don't know. And they're a team that missed the playoffs last year, got scrutinized for every single move that they made in the offseason, and dealt with a ton of drama. A team like that is either ready to crash and burn or shock everybody. So that's what I'm afraid of, is that Giants fans are feeling like, oh, this is a winnable game. This is a game on paper. We match up well against them. Maybe we get the season off to a hot start. Well, maybe, but also maybe they just come out there with a fire underneath them and they blow us out in week one. Like that, I could see something terrible like that happening.
Yeah, I would say similarly that scares me as far as not necessarily that. I don't think the Giants are a good enough team that like teams necessarily have to show up fired up to beat us. My biggest concern is that our defense does what I think they can do to teams like the Vikings and the Commanders with like questionable offensive lines and questionable quarterbacks, and our offense just can't score points. Like Sam Darnold throws the one bomb to Justin Jefferson, and they score like 18 points, and we scored, 6. That's my biggest fear. And then also, I think their edge players are underrated. I think their edge players, if our offensive line is anything like it was the last couple of years, their edge players are going to be an issue for us. The guy that came over there from Houston, Jonathan Greenard, I think he's an elevating player. So I'm hoping that this isn't his coming out game as like the next huge pass rusher in the league. But what really scares me the most is our offense just not being able to score enough points, even if Dexter, because I'm doing like a pregame with like all of Dexter Lawrence's reps against Garrett Bradbury, and he literally has like 28 pressures and run stops in the backfield against them. But it's like if he dominates that game the way that I know that he will, and we lose, I'm going to be really disappointed.
Yeah, and listen, if this offense, like you said, your biggest fear is this offense just doesn't score. I'm looking at the lineup right now for the Minnesota Vikings and this defense, and you're right. Like, there's a few pieces out there, Grenard or Greenard, however you say his
Yeah, I
name.
think it is
That
Grenard. I think so.
Grenard, Turner, obviously rookie who could be really good. They just signed Stephon Gilmore, but generally speaking, this is not a good defense. This Giants offense, new look offense, Dable calling the plays, which is a big factor that we're going to be keeping an eye on all season. Malik Neighbors, new revamped backfield. They got to score points against this defense, is my
They
point.
have to.
And I don't think there's any excuses if they don't.
And I mean, I really think this is a good test to see also if we can run the ball, because I think we should be able to run the ball against this front. And if we can, I think there's no shot. I think there's no shot that they can beat us. But if our secondary like doesn't show up and Justin Jefferson just destroys our secondary, and I'm seeing a comment, the suspension might not be official for Addison. So if it's not, then we have two problems to deal with there. And if they throw the game for us, I mean that'd just be unfortunate, because I think our pass rush is going to be a factor, and that's really what makes me confident about winning this game is the pass rush, because everything else is an unknown.
Yeah, it's pretty much just the pass rush is how I think the Giants win this game. I'm not like confident the secondary matches up well. I don't think our offensive line matches up well. And it could. I mean, it looks like it's going to be a better unit this year, but I just don't put any confidence. I've said that every year.
Until you see it,
Every
yeah.
yeah, every year we're like, oh, they made some changes. The Giants' offensive line should be better. It just never is. So, one of the players on this Vikings defense, though, Ivan Pace Jr. I don't know how that guy went undrafted. I remember during that pre-draft process on this channel, we talked about him a lot, how much we liked him, speedy, athletic linebacker. I don't know how he fell out of the draft and went to the Vikings,
Yeah.
but absolute steal for them.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, I mean, like you're saying, there's nothing really there that like scares me, but it's just that one kind of fluky thing that you think like Sam Darnold has been productive against us before, even on the Jets. So I mean, I just don't want to see that happen.
I don't want to have to sit through life if that does happen.
I
It's
want
going to be
Sam Darnold to
so.
be seeing go.
Yeah, I wish, man. I hope that's the case. And who knows? I love Deontay Banks. That was the player that I wanted in that draft. I've actually been kind of spoiled in recent years. I've gotten all the players that I wanted. I really wanted Deontay Banks, which is just, it's very rare that you get the player you want that late in the first round, too. So I got
Exactly.
really spoiled there. Really wanted Thibodeau, really wanted Neal. Let's not criticize me for that. Again, everybody thought Neal was going to be great. And I really wanted Malik if we weren't getting a quarterback. So I like a lot of these picks that Shane has made in the first round, but they got to start performing. Like even Thibodeau with the 11.5 sacks last year, but only 40 pressures or so.
Yeah, he's got
Let's
to
get those
step it up.
pressures up. Yeah.
And Aziz, I mean, where's Aziz? Like,
Well,
did he
that
just
was
take
my
the
guy.
preseason off?
Yeah.
Because like I was watching that tape again against the Vikings, and he was unblockable. And all of a sudden, like he's fighting against third and fourth stringers, and he can't get off the blocks. So that's concerning too. But my question to you is, what do you think about the whole retired jersey coming out of retirement with Ray Flaherty's number being on retired from Malik Neighbors?
I think it's a cool story. You know, the family gave the blessing, so who am I to dispute it? Is kind of my take on it. I know a lot of Giants fans are disputing it, and I'm not going to criticize you if you are. Like, I get it. You know, it's a historic piece of Giants history, and people don't like to change that. They don't like to mess with tradition
Yeah.
and history. But for me, the family gave the blessing. Neighbors is awesome and exciting, and it's the 100th season, so I feel like in some way it's kind of a celebration of Flaherty and the celebration of Neighbors. It's like old and new celebration. So I like it. I think it's cool. I think it looks awesome. And I'm really excited to see him play with the number 1 jersey.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same. I think this is the perfect year to do it, because a lot of people have never, I mean, a lot of Giants fans didn't even know who he was. They definitely haven't seen him play. So I think this is the perfect year for something like that to happen, and for people to like look him up and figure out who he was. And then also, I mean, not I mean, in a perfect world, Daniel Jones is back here next year because he threw for 35 touchdowns and 4,600 yards. But next year, Malik Neighbors might get number 8 anyway, and it may have just been like he wore number 1 as like a 100-year anniversary and celebration of a Giants legend. So I think it might all work out either way.
Yeah, and can't make predictions about what jersey he's going to wear in the future. You really never know. But I've had a lot of people ask me that on Twitter and on our YouTube channel. They've been like, should I buy a neighbor's jersey or should I wait till next year? I'm like,
Just look at
listen,
it as a 100-year anniversary Malik Neighbors jersey. Either
yep,
way, like he's going to wear the jersey this year. So
yeah.
it's like having
Or
a, not to say that he'll ever be Kobe Bryant level, but it's like buying an 8 Kobe Bryant jersey. It's still
that's
his
the
jersey.
exact argument that I was going to make that I keep making to people. I'm like, Kobe made 2 numbers legendary. I said that on Twitter. I was like, Kobe made 2 numbers legendary. Why can't Malik? I mean, it's Kobe, so that's
Exactly.
probably why not Malik, but who knows? And also, at the end of the day, it's number 1, so it just looks like his draft night jersey. So if there's ever a jersey to double up
Exactly.
on, I guess it would be number 1 and then get,
Here
so
you go. Like how they hold the jersey up. How
exactly.
That was like he touched his jersey the first day he got drafted.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool for Malik. I think that makes it extra cool. I guess kind of on that topic, I'll ask you if you think that they should unretire more jerseys, because that's been a big part of the discourse now on social media. People are saying anything pre-Super Bowl era they should unretire. I actually disagree. I think,
Yeah.
listen, like I'm okay with them getting the blessing for Flaherty's number and giving it to Malik, but then if you start, it's a domino effect and it's a slippery slope, which is why maybe they just shouldn't have touched it. But I don't know. I think that if you're going to go down that path and start dismantling the history of the Giants prior to the Super Bowl, it definitely doesn't make sense during the year 100 celebration. And I just don't think it makes sense in general because this is a really long history rich franchise. I don't think they should do that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think they should do that because pretty much like you said, I mean, it negates the whole point of it being a historic franchise. I do agree with what Wellington Mara said in like the 90s or 80s, where he said, I was listening to Big Blue Kickoff Live, and Paul Dottino said that pretty much Wellington Mara said that he didn't want to retire. I think it was Harry Carson's number, because they had already had too many numbers retired. So, I mean, if you picked every Giants great or every Giant great that helped us win a Super Bowl and retired their jerseys, I mean, we've run out of numbers. So I think they have to stop retiring the jerseys unless it's literally like Eli Manning.
Right.
And then even then, I mean, maybe it's something like where it's like you reset everything after 150 years. But at least for now, I don't think they should just like every year we'll just see someone placing a call into a family like, can we wear your grandfather's jersey? I don't think that should be a normal thing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I wonder how that phone call went with neighbors and the Flaherty family. It might have been a little awkward at first, but no, I do agree with you. But at least I don't know if this is thankfully or if it's unthankfully. I don't think the Giants have any jerseys to retire anytime soon. So
I mean, the
I think,
next one might be Malik Neighbors. Who knows?
yeah, maybe one just stays retired, and maybe it becomes something like the number 88 in Dallas.
Like 7 in LSU or something.
Yeah, 7 in LSU, 88 in Dallas. How they keep giving that to the next receiver that comes in with Irvin and Lamb and all those guys. So, yeah. I got to respond to this one comment. One judge says he's never seen me wear a Giants gear, only the FSG hat. You're not watching enough FSG, bro. I have the Giants long logo hat that I wear
I've
almost
seen you wear
every
Giants
episode.
gear.
Yeah, I wear plenty of Giants gear, man. You got to watch more episodes. The background, I can't really change. I'm in the corner of my room, and there's not a whole lot of room. I'm moving soon, so it'll be better soon. I got a whole plan what the background's going to look like, so stay tuned, and you'll see something a lot cooler in the coming months. But I guess back on the subject of the New York Giants, I don't know. What stands out? Give me something. I'm running dry.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. We talked about the Vikings. We talked about Malik. We talked about let's see.
I don't want to talk about the elephant in the room, the guy behind you. I don't want to talk about him. So anybody but him.
Yeah, we kind of already talked about the defensive line, but what would you say what would you say you're expecting from these top three pass rushers? Like as far as Dex, I just like I said, I watched Big Blue Kickoff live earlier today, and their over unders for like Dex and Kayvon and Brian Burns were like 6 for Dex, 6 sacks, 9.5 for Brian Burns, and I think 8.5 for Kayvon Thibodeau. You think those are too aggressive, or?
I don't really think any of those were too aggressive. I think all of those were fair. I think Burns is the one who's going to have the big number this year. I think he really needed that change of scenery. Kind of similar to, we talked about Evan Neal needs a change of scenery for different reasons, Evan Ingram, whatever. Sometimes these players are playing on really bad teams and they're really good and they've got solid stats. And then once they get to a better team, and not saying that the Giants are necessarily a better
They're
team,
just
but they
a
get
better
to like
team than the Panthers.
right, better team than the Panthers in this state, and they have a better defensive line around him. So I think that creates more opportunities for him to get active as a pass rusher. Plus, I just get the sense that like Brian Burns is one of those players when the spotlight shines on him, he plays better, not worse.
Yeah.
Some players play worse, and that's totally true. And I think again with Evan Neal and Evan Ingram, that was the case. They needed to go to lower market teams, but for Brian Burns here in the Big Apple, he's Spider-Man. It just all makes sense for him to have that dominant season. So I like him to hit double digits this year. I think he's only done it once, maybe twice. I don't remember. But in terms of those other ones, I think I'm curious to see how Dexter Lawrence does because I don't think it's a fluke because he's just so good, but it is almost fluky that he's had so many pressures from that zero position compared to everybody else in the league. It's like, how is he doing this? Right. So you almost wonder if there's going to be a regression to the mean. I don't think there will be because he's so freaking good. But also, I saw that they were moving him around and he wasn't playing the pure zero this summer. So I don't know if that's going to change his production numbers.
Yeah, I think he's going to be dominant wherever they line him up at. I think at the end of the day, I don't think they're going to move him from the nose too much once his actual season starts. But I'm thinking Dex is going to have like his best season so far. I mean, he had that breakout season 2 years ago. He had a better season last year than he did the year before, but I think he had less actual sacks. But I think this year he's going to have an even better season and then even more sacks. Just because, I mean, like, we have some really bad offensive lines that we're going to be playing against. Like, as far as interior offensive lines, we're playing against the Vikings again. We play Washington twice. The Eagles don't have Jason Kelce anymore. And I think Jason Kelce literally is the most annoying guy, ever, because he, for some reason, at his size, at like 296, was able to stonewall Dexter Lawrence at 340, like over and over again. And I have no idea how he did that. But I think he's going to start actually getting production against the Eagles. And Dallas, too. I mean, all of these offensive lines in our division have kind of taken a step back. And the Washington offensive line, he could have like 6 sacks against those guys by himself. So I really do feel good about these three. I'm still concerned about Thibodeau to see if he can be consistent, because you see, like, people say like he got his sacks against backups, but the moves that he was putting on those backup players were moves that I think work against starters. So he's just got to do it consistently. And if he can do that, I think we'll start to see like those 8-sack games, 7-sack games that we used to see like 10 years ago.
I almost wonder if he just feels more confident when he's going up against the backups because he knows, like, this is a backup, I should beat him, so now I will beat him. And then when he goes up against, like, a Trent Williams, he's like, oh, I probably am not going to have a productive day, so then it gets in his mind. Some players are like that. It is sports, and these are people at the end of the day. It's kind of tough when you separate the numbers and look at them as individuals, So I wonder if that's what it is for Kayvon, but I think playing alongside Brian Burns is just going to help him with that. It's just going to create more one-on-ones for everybody. That's what Justin Tuck told me as well when I spoke to him last week. I think everybody gets more one-on-one opportunities. They get more productive. And I think because of that, especially because Kayvon Thibodeau is getting more one-on-ones and the pocket's pushing his way in many different ways, I think he should have a better year. But it's put up or shut up, right? Like year 3, now you really got to put it together.
Because, thinking about it, does Kayvon Thibodeau even have a future? And he kind of alluded to this. Does he even have a future as a Giant? Like, this may be his audition. Even if he does become a superstar, this may be his audition for his next team. because we already paid Brian Burns like $30 million. So are we going to pay Brian Burns $30 million, Dex $23 million, and Kayvon Thibodeau $30 million, and then not have a quarterback or a team that we think can win a Super Bowl? So it almost, if someone likes Thibodeau and wants him to stay on the team, it almost makes him look better. It almost makes it look better for him to stay a Giant if he has 8 sacks and just looks like a good pass rusher.
Yeah, he won't get out of the building, I don't think, in 2 years unless he just starts playing significantly worse, just because they can't miss on both of those picks, right? Like they can't miss on 5 and 7.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, they got to make number 5 work. But no, that is interesting, though. I've never actually kind of thought about that. Like, what does Burns mean for the future of Thibodeau? I think that, it could end up helping him get a bigger payday, but maybe that payday comes elsewhere because we can't pay him. I don't know. Maybe we
Yeah,
end
I
up
mean, is it
putting.
possible to pay your 2 edges like $65 million a year?
It's a lot of money. I'll tell you that. That's 80 million plus between the 3 pass rushers if you
Yep.
factor Dexter Lawrence into that. So it's possible if you have a rookie contract at the quarterback
There
position,
you go.
probably. So I think it's going to be interesting to see. I almost wonder. I was talking about this. I was joking with Alex earlier today when I said this. I was like, maybe the Giants are average this year, then it all blows up the following year, and boom, Manning back under center.
There you go, man. Yeah, there's a lot of quarterbacks that I actually like. The USC quarterback. He's only played like a couple of snaps. He only played that one game while Caleb was out. I like him. I like, of course, I haven't seen Arch Manning play, but I'm just assuming he'll be good. I have no idea why he's decided to sit for this long. And then, who knows? Daniel Jones may have just been the most expensive stopgap quarterback in NFL history, because I just don't think he's going to be as bad as he was last year. I refuse to think that he can possibly be as bad as he was behind that offensive line that was, I've been very critical of Daniel Jones, but that offensive line was like the worst offensive line play I've ever seen in my life. Over I've seen games or 2 games, but like 6 games of just horrible offensive line play. I haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah, it was historically bad. I mean, the 85 sacks, you do have to contribute a lot of that to the quarterback not getting the ball out of their hands. Like Tommy DeVito had that problem as well, though. He held onto the ball for a long time in those games.
DeVito was back there making sandwiches.
Yeah, he really was. But at the same time, 85 sacks, you don't get to that number without some really, really bad offensive line play. It doesn't matter. Yeah, it is. And that's kind of been the story of Daniel Jones' career. It's been a team effort, whether you want to attribute some of his poor performance to him, to bad coaching, lack of WR1, bad offensive line play. There's always been some sort of factor held against him. And obviously fans are going to argue that he should rise above them. And some are going to say that it's all his fault. I don't know. There's always one way or another to dive into this conversation. I'm trying to pick my words carefully here on Daniel Jones to not ruffle feathers. But okay, the preseason, the way that he played, what was your reaction to that? I thought that the first interception was his fault. Not entirely his fault, but his fault. The second interception, I actually placed the blame mostly on Jalen Hyatt. I thought that was a really bad route that he ran, and he didn't do any favors for Jones. But from that first half of football that we got against the Texans, did you see something positive? Like, what was it that stood out to you?
First off, I don't understand why the national media and most Giants fans left that game saying Daniel Jones disappoints in a preseason. First of all, it's a preseason game. Second of all, he came back after that interception and had a nice throw and actually operated the offense and looked pretty decent. So I wouldn't say that my takeaway from that game was that, he just looked awful. The first interception, it's interesting you say that. It was his fault, and it was a horrible play that he made. But also, I forgot what I saw on tape, but I'm pretty sure Malik Neighbors.
Neighbors was late off the ball. Yeah, Neighbors was late off the ball first. Yeah. And then when he runs this over route, he actually runs into a defensive back well past 5 yards. It should have been a penalty.
Yeah, and because Daniel Jones looked to Malik Neighbors, and because Malik Neighbors made that mistake, he couldn't throw him the ball. But then at that point, you just have to throw the ball away. But he decided not to do that. and
Right.
that wasn't good. So, I mean, that first play wasn't good. The first throw that he made that everybody just says, oh, he almost threw a pick six first. That was another play where I was like, Malik Neighbors kind of ran a lazy route. It's a timing route. You want him to
Yeah.
throw with anticipation. And then when he throws with anticipation, you get mad because the receiver doesn't do what he's supposed to do. And then that Hyatt interception, I agree with you. Hyatt is very fast, but he really has issues on these deep routes with his positioning. Like he kind of makes it as difficult as possible for the quarterback. But even then, I thought that ball should have been on the other shoulder. But from Daniel Jones's view, I'm pretty sure Hyatt kind of like swerved off to the right or something like that and made the throw a little bit more difficult. So
Yeah.
there was some
I
ups and downs, but I didn't leave that preseason game like feeling worse about Daniel Jones than I did before it. I just didn't think it was that horrible of a performance.
I'll tell you who I felt worse about. It's Brian Dable, and I'll get back to that in a second. But on that Hyatt play, my issue there was he loves that outside release, and he loves to get up the sideline. And great, like you're super fast. That's what you should do. But you got to work your way back to that original line. You got to
Yeah,
stack the cornerback. He just never did that. He just runs tightrope up the
he's
sideline.
not good at that yet.
Yeah, you're not going to get open doing that. Like you're leaving such little room for the quarterback to actually throw the ball into. So that was my problem with Hyatt. I did a breakdown on it on the channel, and for the neighbors route on the first one, he gets bumped past line of scrimmage, which should have been a penalty. They didn't call it, but then he runs towards the line of scrimmage rather than over the linebacker and away. So again, Jones
Yep.
shouldn't have thrown a pick on either of those plays. He could have thrown a better ball on the second one. He definitely shouldn't have thrown that ball to wherever he threw it on the first one. Just throw it into the dirt. Theo Johnson's over in the area. Just throw it in the dirt. It's incompletion. So that's kind of the problem with Jones is when things crumble around you, how do you respond? And on those two plays, he didn't respond well. And that's been a consistent problem. But when things go well around him, he can make some good throws. He can make some good plays. We saw that in 2022. So back to the other point that I made. Coming out of that game, I wasn't like more down on Daniel Jones than I was going into it. But I did have issue with Brian Dable. My issue with Brian Dable is the fact that that was Daniel Jones's first preseason action. And I've been arguing about this for like a month now with fans and viewers of the channel because I've said there was no excuse for Daniel Jones not to play in that first preseason game. Everybody immediately, I'm sure somebody's typing it right now, they're going to go, it was a physical week of practice with the Detroit Lions. Guys, they can't touch the quarterback. They can't touch the quarterback in practice. It wasn't physical for him. All right. So then the argument is, well, the offensive line went through a physical week. Okay, sure. That's fine. Still, Patrick Mahomes played in the first week of preseason. He only played 6 snaps. That's all I was asking for. Give me Daniel Jones for 5 freaking snaps. Get him used to playing in the full game. Feel the speed of the NFL game again. It's been 9 months. Just give him 5 snaps. That makes those next 20 snaps that he gets in the second preseason game way easier. Brian Dable did him no favors throwing him into the wild in Houston. I get it. Houston had their backups out there on defense, whatever, but he did him no favors by giving him 0 playing time in that first preseason game and in that third preseason game. So I still have issue with Brian Dable. They gave all the starters the night off in that third game. I get it. You don't want anybody getting hurt. You want everybody healthy for the regular season. But Jones played 30 snaps in this preseason, something around that number. Didn't we learn our lesson last year? He played that one drive versus Carolina, and everybody was like, oh, yeah, breakout season coming. He got paid, and he's looking great. He barely played in the preseason. He looked like he had so much rust on him in week 1. That was an awful, ugly game from the Giants. They got blown out by the Cowboys at home. I'm afraid that something like that could happen again because not enough of these guys played enough during the preseason.
Yeah. I mean, 2 things come from that. Thinking about last year is it looked like they had that same confidence on that first drive against Dallas because we went right down the field and everybody was like, okay, we're here. And as soon as something went wrong, they all kind of crumbled. So maybe it's good that he threw that pick 6 because now he's already kind of bounced back. And I'm sure people are saying in the comments he went against the backup secondary. I mean, it is what it is. He still made the throw. And I mean, I've been wanting Daniel Jones to make these throws his entire career, whether it's against starters or backups. We went against, I forgot if it was Eli playing this game. I'm pretty sure it was Daniel Jones, where like the entirety of the 49ers team, offense and defense, was like all backups, and they destroyed us. So like backups are still NFL players. These guys are going to be playing on Sunday. Now the 4th-string guys, I mean, no, but these backups are going to be playing. But yeah, I mean, as far as playing in the preseason, I saw Trevor Lawrence and Evan Ingram, like I said, play almost the entire first half against the Falcons and all backups. But it's just about getting those reps. I completely agree with you, especially when your quarterback is coming off of an ACL. You want him to get as many snaps as possible. And people say, like, what if they get hurt? I mean, if they get hurt, it's football. I mean, guys get hurt. What if they get hurt week 2? What if they get hurt I mean, either
Exactly. They can get
way,
hurt in practice.
they exactly. You can get hurt with a red jersey on. Teddy Bridgewater tore his knee up in like 17 different places in practice, like 5 years ago. So, or maybe even longer. But I don't disagree. I think he needed those reps too.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of just to close this argument on this. The injury concern. Daniel Jones was medically cleared to play. Like some people are saying, I don't want him out there in the preseason because I don't want him to re-aggravate his knee. That's not how that works. Like he surgically repaired it. He's been recovering for 6 months now. He's fully healthy. And if he's medically cleared, he can do everything that everybody else on the field can. He can run, he can cut. So you don't have concerns about that. And then if you're too afraid to let your players play in the preseason because you don't want them to get hurt, it says 2 things to me. Number 1, you're playing football scared. When you play football scared is when you get injured. Number 2, you're afraid of the rest of the roster. You don't think you have enough talent on it if one of those guys gets hurt. That's a big red flag to me. And so it's almost like no matter which way you slice this, I don't think there was going to be a winner here, or at least Brian Dable, Joe Shane. They couldn't win here in that preseason. But the number one win that they got is that they came out of it pretty much all healthy. So I guess maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, whatever. I think it's always going to be open to debate. But crucial year 6 for Daniel Jones, no doubt. I guess we will just wrap it up with the Daniel Jones conversation, finalize our points there. I've avoided this topic for as long as I possibly could, just because I don't want to see the chat get too upset with either one of us. But I do want to hear. I'm curious to know like what your thoughts are and how confident or disconfident you are in Daniel Jones going into the season.
Yeah, I just think it's funny that people like, if you go to my channel and you go to my comments, or even like the people that like kind of like stalk me on Twitter every time I talk about Daniel Jones, there's a lot of people that think like I'm a Daniel Jones fanboy and he can do no wrong. And then there's a lot of people that think that like I despise Daniel Jones and like I wish him the worst. Like that guy that said he played against Daniel Jones and like and sacked him twice. But I mean, I think Daniel Jones, I'm expecting this year, if you want like stats predictions, I'm expecting like 3,800 yards. I'm expecting 25 touchdowns and about 4 or 5 rushing touchdowns. I think he's going to have his best year. And that's just my opinion. I think Daniel Jones, I'm not going to change my opinion based on what I saw last year. I think he's a top 15 quarterback. I'm not sure if he'll ever be a quarterback that has the. I've never seen him be put in a situation where he needed to be super clutch in a big moment because we've always been bad. So he's top 15 and he's a guy that I'm not sure we can win with. So that's why I've been kind of like, we can probably replace this guy because we don't even know if he has any kind of like an it factor. But as far as this season, I think we're going to win anywhere between 6 to 10 games, depending on, factors, the way the ball bounces. But I think Malik Neighbors is going to help Daniel Jones a lot. I think that Jalen Hyatt is going to continue to develop. I think Darius Slayton is going to continue to be reliable. And I think the running game is going to be more efficient than it was with Saquon Barkley, not because, Saquon is worse than what we have, but because the offensive line actually pushes the defensive line backwards. This is the first time I've seen it in years where the defensive line goes backwards consistently. So I think the offense is going to be more efficient. And I think I can't predict that the guy's going to all of a sudden be a super productive guy. I'm not going to predict 30 plus touchdowns, but I am predicting anywhere from, 23 passing to 25 passing touchdowns and 4 or 5 rushing. So I'm thinking he'll have his best statistical season, but I'm not sure that we'll all be convinced that he's irreplaceable at the end of it.
Yeah, and I'll wrap up my thoughts on Daniel Jones and kind of respond to that. Like the 20 touchdown benchmark is one that he's hit only once, shockingly enough. It's one that he needs to hit this year with Neighbors and hopefully an improved offensive line. We don't know until we see it on paper. But there's the factor at play of his injury clause in his contract. Russell Wilson threw 26 touchdowns last year to like 8 picks, and he wasn't great, but he was good. He was good enough. But the argument that I've been making all summer is Daniel Jones has to be great. Like, he can't be good enough. Russell Wilson was good enough, got benched because they didn't want to have to pay him all that money if he got hurt. Daniel Jones, same thing could happen. And that's just the reality I think Giants fans need to prepare themselves for. If he's not great and he's only good enough, Joe Shane might have a really difficult decision to make by week 15 or 12, however long it takes. So I'm hoping, and this is the final thing, no matter how much I criticize Daniel Jones, I'm always hoping that these players prove me wrong. Jones, Evan Neal, all these guys. If I don't believe in them, I hope I'm wrong. I want them to succeed. I want the Giants to hoist a Super Bowl trophy, the Lombardi trophy. I want it next year. Just, I'm not sure. I have my question marks about Daniel Jones, hoping that he bounce back. Before we do wrap this thing, though, I want to ask one more fun question just to have a little conversation here.
While you're pulling that up, the backup center, I see in the comments, the backup centers right now are Greg Van Roten and Runyon, which I hate because, like, why have a starter as your backup? So I'm hoping they bring up Morrissey, but,
I think they should sign Will Clapp. I think Will Clapp makes sense for them.
Funny name.
I know everybody laughs at the name, but he got cut this week. I don't know if he signed somewhere.
That wouldn't be a bad option either,
Yeah, I think he's a decent player. Let me share my screen here. I'm going to ask you and ask the chat to answer this question that I asked on Twitter today. Pick one player from the Giants Super Bowl 46 team, plug them onto this year's roster.
I mean, are you serious? I mean, I love JPP. I think he's better than any edge we have. But I think, I'll take Brian Burns if it means that I get to get a quarterback. I mean, Eli Manning is about to moonwalk into the Hall of Fame. And if he was on this team, I really believe that this team is a playoff team. Because this would be the best offensive line Eli's played with since 2010. Even 2011, we had some shakiness. So I would take Eli. If it was honorable mention, I would say Corey Webster. Or it's just one player in general. It's not even out of those. Okay, it's other two. So, it would be Eli. It would be Eli, and then probably, it would be Corey Webster because we need that cornerback too. But I think it's overwhelmingly Eli Manning.
I agree with you. Corey Webster had 6 interceptions that season, though. I forgot about that until I was researching, putting this thing together. He had 6 picks. He was really good. JPP, 16.5 sacks. We all know how good Antrell Roll was. But I think the people who don't choose Eli Manning on this, it's not a slight against Daniel Jones to choose Eli Manning. I think a lot of people are forgetting how good Eli Manning was that year. I mean, he had 49.
Should have had 5,000 yards if Hakeem Nicks didn't drop a walk-in touchdown against Washington.
Right. He should have had 5,000 yards, and then he had the most passing yards ever in the postseason, I think, in a single postseason run.
He had the most passing yards, I'm pretty sure, in the postseason, but also in a season in general, like counting the regular and postseason together.
Yeah, that was a different Eli Manning.
You want to talk about elite quarterback play? Like, non-debatable elite quarterback play. 2011 Eli was ridiculous. Like, he was complete. He put the team completely on his back.
Yeah, they had the 32nd ranked offensive line in football that year from PFF.
32nd ranked run game, 32nd ranked defense.
Yep. The team turned it on. The defense played a lot better in the postseason. That's true. But generally speaking, it was Eli Manning versus the world. I will never forget that season. I think about it all the time. I think about
Deion
Eli
Sanders,
in that season.
Rooting for Eli Manning every week.
I believe in Eli.
I'll never forget that. I feel so bad for the younger fan, and we're not even old, but I feel bad for the younger fans that didn't get to see, that don't remember that whole lead up, and even 2007, because that was just so fun. It was just so fun back then.
Yeah, that 11-12 season was just so much fun. Like you said, Deion and the I believe in Eli thing, and the fact that Eli just kept, every time you were in the fourth quarter and Giants were down, you were like, we're gonna pull this one out, aren't we? Like, Eli's gonna do this thing, and he always did. It was crazy. I miss it so much.
Crazy. Like, even when Eli was at the end of his career, Giants fans who had seen Eli at his prime were like, we're gonna win this game. And I have not felt like that since Eli Manning retired. And I just wanted, this is why Giants fans are like going crazy and like literally acting ridiculous to try to replace Daniel Jones just because they want that same level of mental security at the end of the game to just say, "Oh, we won the game. They left too much time." And I would love that. I kind of felt like that for Daniel Jones in 2022. And I want that feeling again. That's really all people want.
Yeah, I was at that first Daniel Jones start in Tampa Bay in 2019,
That
and I
was
thought that we were
incredible.
getting
Yeah.
I thought we were getting that quarterback again because he somehow pulled it out a rabbit out of the hat, fourth quarter comeback. That was incredible. I was like, this was just like an Eli Manning victory. It was
Exactly.
cool. But I don't know if I've ever reached that high again. I mean, the playoff win for sure. I was in person for that Tampa game, so it's a little different. But Eli was just different, like in the fourth quarter of that season, and he was incredibly good. And so it's not a slight to pick Eli from that Super Bowl team. The other takeaway that I have, though, from doing that little kind of mental exercise with the 46 team on Twitter, my takeaway is that this Giants team is a really long ways away. Like Corey Webster had 6 picks. I didn't even put Aaron Ross on here who had 3 interceptions as the CB2. He was really good. You had Antrell Roll, who's a stud. I think he made the Pro Bowl that year. Pierre Paul had 16 and a half sacks. You had Eli. I didn't even put a single one of the receivers on this list.
Yeah.
Hakeem Nicks, Victor
Victor
Cruz,
Cruz.
even Manningham was good. Kareem McKenzie on the offensive line was good. That team was really good. Like they underperformed in the regular season, but they were a pretty good team. You cannot go team for team, this team versus that 2011 team. So just put it in perspective. Giants fans got to temper expectations for 2024-25.
Yeah, and OC didn't even come back that year until like week 12 or something like that.
That's right. Yeah, that's true. And Tuck only had like 5 sacks, but Justin Tuck, that's my guy.
Exactly.
Anyway, that was a lot of fun. I had a really good time talking Giants football with you, Diggy. I always do.
Yeah.
Hope you come back on the channel again sometime soon. Where can the people find you?
Digge546, just like you see here at the bottom of the screen, pretty much everywhere. Pretty sure I'm on every social media app, every major one. Excited for this season. I'm gonna have a lot of pregame content. I'm gonna try to see if I can get some Vikings creators over here on my channel. So stay tuned. But always fun being on here, talking Giants football, and hopefully, we can have a fun season this year. At least have some exciting plays this year.
Yes, sir. I certainly hope so. Not enough explosive plays last year. Maybe we get some this season, or maybe the defense just makes so many plays, carries us to victory. Old school football. I'm not sure. But again, thanks for coming on. Everybody, make sure go subscribe to Diggy. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this stream. Make sure to subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed all of that fun stuff. And we'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants.
All right.